Hey, what's up everybody? True Boxing here. Thank you for coming back to get hit with the truth. So today we are doing the rankings for the heavyweight fantasy interactive tournament that I'm hosting to determine the best heavyweight from the year 2000 all the way to 2024 here, as we've had undisputed champions. We've had a big gap between undisputed champions. Excuse me, from Lennox Lewis to Alexander Usyk now. It was almost 25 years since we had an undisputed heavyweight world champion. So we are going to discuss all the champions in between. And this video, we're looking at my number 8 heavyweight from based on a point system from the past 25 years. And that is former 2-time WBA heavyweight champion of the world, the Russian giant Nikolay Valuev. Now, before we get into that, if you could smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel, I really do appreciate any and all support that I can get as I continue to build my channel here. So, this tournament, as I said, really looking forward to it. We're looking at every heavyweight champion. It's a 32-man tournament. And this video, again, is on the number 8 seed that I have based on my point system. And again, that is a former 2-time heavyweight champion, Nikolay Valuev. Valuev came into the picture right around, let me see here, looking at his resume again. He came into the picture, started taking a more serious approach around 2004. He had beaten a couple so-so guys on the rise. Paulo Vidoz, I remember, had one loss when he fought him. He stopped him in 9 rounds. Clifford Etienne, he knocked him out in the 3rd round in 2005, and that's really kind of where he kind of, started to really look like, hey, we might have something here. Then he fought Larry Donald, the veteran former world title challenger, in October of that year. That was a WBA final eliminator, and he beat Donald by a close majority decision. But because that fight was close, a lot of people weren't sure how good he was. Then he took on John Ruiz. Ruiz was, for all intents and purposes, a lot of people feel with his style, such an unattractive style that, he had a stranglehold and they just wanted anybody to beat him for the title. A lot of people were hoping he was going to get knocked out so he wouldn't get another title shot. And he went over to Russia to fight Valuev, and Valuev and him went at it. It was a decent battle, but Valuev, even at 7 feet, barely edged Ruiz by a majority decision as he captured the WBA heavyweight title and ended John Ruiz's reign. So from there, the goal was then to bring him to the United States. So after a 6-month layoff, he returned in June of 2006 and took on, Owen Beck, a American contender, stopped Owen Beck in the 3rd round, and that led to an October title defense against Monty Barrett, who was a legitimate American heavyweight, but he towered over Monty Barrett. And Monty Barrett had his moments, but he just beat down Monty Barrett en route to an 11th round TKO victory. Then in the battle of the biggest heavyweight title battle ever in terms of weight, and it still might be so, I'd have to look in on it, he would battle Jamil McCline in January of 2007. And before this fight could really get going, McCline injured his knee, went down in the 3rd round, could not continue, and he would win by TKO victory there. So he was 4-0 in title fights at that moment. And, people were just kind of unclear on how good he was. Then he would make a mandatory defense in April of 2007 against undefeated Ruslan Shagayev. Shagayev had defeated John Ruiz to earn this spot. He was a slick southpaw. So people, it was a different style than Valuev had fought. And he definitely threw Valuev's rhythm off. He boxed from the outside, out-hustled Valuev, and defeated Nikolay Valuev, handing him his first loss, and took the WBA heavyweight title. From there, he needed to get back into the mix. He took on an undefeated but little-known John Bergion in his next fight and got a unanimous decision. Then he took on former world champion Sergey Lyahovic, and defeated him by a 12-round unanimous decision, but they were both kind of unimpressive. Then after a mandatory title fight with, that was also a WBA final eliminator against Valuev. After a mandatory title fight with Ruslan Shagayev fell through because of a failed, some kind of failed drug test on Shagayev's part, Shagayev was named champion in recess, and he was allowed to fight for the vacant title, and he would take on John Ruiz, the man he originally won the championship from, in a rematch. This fight was another close, action-packed battle, but Valuev separated them from the first fight just a little bit more and got out with a 12-round unanimous decision to become a two-time WBA heavyweight world champion. Then in his first defense of his second reign, 4 months later, he would take on former 4-time heavyweight champion of the world, but the very old Evander Holyfield. And surprisingly, he struggled with Holyfield, but he would get out of there with a close majority decision victory, and Holyfield's kind of his last real stand, and this would also be the last victory of Nikolay Valuev's title run. In his next title defense, which was 11 months later, he took on David Haye, the former cruiserweight world champion, and was in the fight but couldn't catch up with Haye enough, and Haye did just enough work, outworked them to a 12-round majority decision, and took the WBA heavyweight championship of the world from Nikolay Valuev. Valuev would never would retire after this. He would not return to boxing following that, and that was pretty much it for him. He had a very brief run between basically 2005 and 2009 was his last run. So you know, not a brief. I mean, that's pretty good. And he was also a 2-time champion. But he very quietly built up a 6-2 record. But his wins over John Ruiz, you know, both of them were significant. You know, those were his 2 best wins right there. You know, but the one thing he struggled with, and this is a good point going into it, look at the 2 losses. And also look at the fight with Holyfield. We look at the guys with the technique and the skill sets, right? Ruslan Shagayev, a boxing southpaw, you know, shorter, but a boxing southpaw, outworked a majority decision. Holyfield, at his old age, almost beat him, lost the majority decision to him. And then David Haye, boxing, staying away, smaller fighter, movement. You could tell that was an issue, but he packed a granite chin. I mean, the guy was over 300 pounds. He was 7 feet tall. This guy was an absolute beast, but he was slow. His punches weren't anything special. He was more of a wear you down guy, but because of his size, he was able to wear down the guys of his era, and whether he edged them out by close decisions or knocked them out, he defeated you know, majority of his opponents. Again, 6-2, 8 title fights. That's nothing to snare at. So Nikolay Valuev, not sure how good he's going to do in this tournament. I'll be honest about that. But he did have his little niche here. He did have his little his run, 2 title reigns, and he did beat John Ruiz and really made the boxing world happy, because John Ruiz was a guy that nobody wanted to see fight with his style. So the fact that Valuev kept him at bay and he was such a menacing force, I think he might give problems to some guys in this tournament. So we'll see. We'll see what the matchups are. We'll see how everybody feels. But that's my number 8 heavyweight for my interactive fantasy heavyweight boxing tournament to determine the best heavyweight from the year 2000 all the way to 2024. I hope you enjoyed this video on former 2-time heavyweight champion Nikolay Valuev. If you did, smash the like button, leave a comment, or subscribe to the channel. I appreciate any and all support. This is True Boxing. You've been hit with the truth.